just 2 weeks into the new administration, I decided I would head down to Washington, D.C. myself. In part, I wanted to meet with James P. Moore of the Washington Institute. I sought out his expertise, particularly in the economics realm. After all, he had served in that capacity under 2 previous Republican presidents, so perhaps reaching across the aisle, I could gain better perspective, not only for myself, but for listeners. And we sat down to talk about, well, what to expect out of this new administration, particularly related to the economic and trade policies.
You know, it's interesting. I have been in Washington since literally the first day that Jimmy Carter was sworn into office. So I've had a lot of years to be able to watch the city move in one direction and another. It is clear that in time, the bureaucracy of Washington has grown more and more. We've taken on different kinds of projects that maybe our founding fathers never would have thought of, and that have been added to the budget and to the policies of America. And it was that concern that I think brought President Trump to office. People were concerned that things weren't being done in the way that they felt that they should have been. And what has happened in a very short period of time, I mean a very short period of time, is that these executive orders have produced a new process, a new era in the history of our country.
Will these executive orders stick, or are they merely for marketing purposes, headline grabbing, shock and awe, as this campaign is saying? Are we seeing pushback? Can we expect pushback?
Well, again, it's a little bit of what I was mentioning earlier, the old adage, run fast and break a lot of things. You know, this notion that things have gotten so out of control that the only way to deal with it is to strike out quickly and then try to figure out how to put it all back together. Now, some would argue that that's not the way to go, but that's what's happening, and we're going to have to figure out how this ultimately works.
What can we be doing? What should we be doing? And to what avail?
I think watching the stock market, I think seeing what happens with interest rates, I think those sorts of things, and quite frankly, people going to the grocery store and saying, you know, I purchased eggs last week and it was this price, and and bread and milk, and so I think that the American people are, you know, we need to give them a lot more credit than sometimes people give them credit for. They're the ones who are going to be standing with picket signs if they don't seem to have been able to achieve the new course in the road that Donald Trump made clear he wanted to provide the American people and that they're expecting to see happen.
Are we about to see some very harsh economic realities as the American public?
Well, first of all, I think the lessons learned are going to come real fast. This is not something that we're going to be trying to figure out 2 years from now.
Let's look at the federal budget and the cuts that are going on now. Are these the smartest and best way to tackle something I think we all agree on? Federal spending has gone crazy, it's gone berserk, but is this the best way of handling this?
Washington Institute for Business, Government, and Society, which I head, came into existence with the notion that quite frankly, the challenges of the world today cannot be addressed by business alone, by government alone, by society alone, that it is a collaboration that needs to take place. But certainly what has happened in just the past few weeks, actually, is that we have a very different approach than I had envisioned. Elon Musk, for example, certainly is the most powerful business leader that has ever found his way into the Oval Office. There is this real desire on the part of Elon Musk and his people to be able to do anything and everything they can to reform the government. He has come up with statistics like he wants to see 75% of the federal workforce, for example, take off, and that we can work our government with far fewer people than what we have. Some of these have been tremendously daring. And I don't think all this is going to go through, but he sure is going to try. But that's this combination of having these business leaders, and these are not just wealthy business leaders. These are at the top of their game and the top of the chain, and all of them are billionaires, and millionaires really are kind of at the bottom of the rung.
Elon Musk, though, do we not end up reinforcing a distrust of business working with government that I think for a while P3s, public-private partnerships, were working around demonstrating, no, we can do some good? Have we now basically just thrown the baby out with the bathwater?
We'll see. I'll tell you honestly, Donald Trump, President Trump, has intended to be able to go in this direction. The American people voted for him without question. And so, the American people have essentially given him license to do what he needs to do. The one thing that they're having to deal with, and this is going to be a great concern for the next 4 years, and that is the fact that we do have a judicial branch and that they enter into the scene in determining whether or not what is being done correctly or not.
What would you advise from this aerial view?
There, for example, is an incredible organization called Management Advisory Group that has just come up with what they refer to as Federalism 2.0. And they argue that we have really lost our way from our founding fathers in the notion that we really are not fully appreciating the difference between centralization and decentralization. We today are 50 states and some territories. And each state has a very different way to be able to deal with the problems and the challenges that its constituents are having to contend with. But there's concern, for example, when I was working on Capitol Hill, there was the creation of the Department of Education. In the old days, education was taken care of on the state level. And it was believed by some that it was well placed to be able to have it decentralized that way. But there were others who believed that we ought to centralize it. And that's exactly what happened under President Carter. It became the Department of Education. But now, after this period of time has passed, it's believed that local governments and states should be taking on that task. And so, we'll see what happens. And I do believe that in the not too distant future, we'll see that the Department of Education indeed departs. But this group that I'm mentioning have been doing an extraordinary job because they have been in government before. They've been in Democratic and Republican administrations. They've seen how it works, much the way that I've seen how it works. And they've come to the conclusion that there's a need to be able to reduce the number of people that are involved in the government, the bureaucrats, and that there's a need to be able to understand the approach to addressing the policies and the concerns of the American people. And I applaud what they're doing, and I'm hoping that they will be listened to very carefully by the Trump administration.
Well, Jim, you certainly have given me some reassurances. It's always good to have this level of bipartisan conversation, not shouting match. So thank you so much for taking the time and giving me your point of view on this.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Enjoyed it very much.